Hey everyone, it's Scott from Heroic Studios Gaming coming at you again today for another video. How's it going? Hey. I'm just making another video today. This is going to be my RPG corner for the month of March, and I'm talking to you about this game, Jiangshi, Blood in the Banquet Hall, and I'm not entirely sure I pronounced that correctly because Chinese, and this is actually from, I believe, Cantonese, but Mandarin has been the hardest language for me to get, which is weird to say considering that I already have, decent control over my Japanese and an okay control over my Korean. Why can't I get Chinese? And the answer is because, I don't know, tones and stuff. I'm just really bad at them. From what I understand, I can make whole sentences just fine, but when I come to individual words, I screw them up really bad, and people have a hard time understanding me when I'm trying to say words. But anyway, that's not important. What we're talking about today is this game. This is a wonderful game that was made by the group over at Wet Ink, and also I wanted to mention Game and a Curry Games. And I'm bringing that up because it's important to note that Wet Ink, while they've done some cool stuff, and they're definitely the people behind this, the Game and Curry Games are really the other name to mention. It's sort of like my work with Maximum Apocalypse, and I like Rock Manor is the big company that makes it, but there's also Heroic Studios Gaming in the background that's doing a lot of the effort to make it all written out for you. So anyway, just want to point that out. I just want to make sure that we got that down, that both companies were involved in this. But this game it's called a tabletop RPG, and it sort of, like, I'm going to explain a little bit that I don't necessarily agree with that assessment of it. I will say that it is more RPG than board game, but it does have a lot of board game elements to it. So I'll explain that a little bit more in my review of it and feelings about it. But I just wanted to tell you what it is. So it's considered a tabletop role-playing game, and it says run the family, survive the night. The basic concept is that there are these hopping vampire monsters known as the Jiangshi. And these Jiangshis, there's a little picture of them on the back. They're like undead. They're kind of like zombies. I didn't actually know a whole lot about them before this board game. And apparently that makes me a really bad person with a, bachelor's degree in East Asian studies. Because a lot of people I know were like, what? Well, how do you not know about these? I learned about them from Shaman King or some other place. And I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't know about them. But anyway, they're basically these sort of zombie vampire things that are basically dead bodies, and so they have rigor mortis, and that rigor mortis causes them to not be able to walk normally, so they don't just get to move through the night and find their victims and hunt them, right? No, they actually have to hop. Because they have these stiff muscles, so they have to jump from toward their victims, and so they're called hopping vampires. I think the name actually means something else. And I forgot to look it up, which is really bad of me, especially since I'm talking about it right now. But anyway, that's not the point. Let's talk about the game. So the purpose of the game, the gameplay, is to sort of role play out these characters who are people, who are normal people that are typically Chinese immigrants, but there's some sort of interaction that's in the rules that say you can play kind of other characters, but the whole premise, of course, is that is focusing on the Asian immigrant group, and you are first, second, third generation immigrants, probably second or third, because typically that's what you'd want to play. You wouldn't want to play first generation because you need some background knowledge of China that potentially you wouldn't have unless you actually are a person of descent from from China. But you're essentially a second or third generation immigrant to America. It's the 1920s. And in order to be here, despite the Chinese Exclusionary Act from the 1890s, you have a business. And typically this business is a restaurant. The game sort of assumes that it's a restaurant, but it could be a laundromat, I guess. You could easily just make some changes to be it's a laundry place. But typically it's a restaurant, and the rules kind of reflect that it's a restaurant based on the segments of the daytime and the tasks that you have to do. So the idea is you guys run a restaurant and during the day, and you just do your normal stuff, trying to live your life, run your restaurant, make your money, get through the racism of the 1920s against you as an Asian person, and just get through the day, and just move on to the next day, and basically live your normal life. But your character has hopes and dreams, and you're trying to get there to wherever those hopes and dreams are. But at night, when the sun goes down, at night in the city, right? As the sun goes down, things get a little iffy, particularly related to these sort of folklore monsters that you know a lot about one of you and your family knows a decent amount about, but affect you specifically because these are creatures from your your homeland or your family's ancestral land. And so these things come out and they're kind of like doing their hopping vampire thing, and you're tasked with stopping them. So you basically have to like work your restaurant in the day, save the world at night. That's kind of the idea. That's why it's called Blood in the Banquet Hall. But that's the premise of the game. There's a little bit to it as to whether or not it's a role-playing game or not. Now, I'm going to start pulling up things. I'm going to start showing you part of the reason why I have a bit of an argument about it being called a role-playing game. Now, I'll preface all of this by saying that no matter what I say from this point forward, you should know I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm giving it 2 thumbs up because I'm super excited about it and I really want to play it. I haven't had a chance yet. But as of making this video, that might change before you actually see this video. But I gave it 2 thumbs up, and I do recommend checking it out. So just prefacing all of what I say after this with that information, right? So like you should understand that I am pro this game regardless of what I say next. All right, so opening my box up, I've got a cool piece of art and another cool piece of art. And like the very first thing that I want to say about this game, the pro of this game, is that the art is super cool. Like this is super cool art. That's the cover art, obviously, but I could just flip open to some of the art in the book and just show you that like the art in the book is pretty dang cool. There we go. Here's the Chinatown art. That's like a 2-page spread. It's nice, right? Let's see. Where's the yeah, here's just the inside right there. Ooh, that's cool. So and then I've got let's see, I'll just jump around to the back. I think there's one with like, yeah. So there's like this one of like the family trying to like keep the like things out, right? So like there's decent art in this thing, and so I like the art. The art is automatically good. Now in this box, I've got my character sheets. This is important to note that some of what I'm going to explain is based off this character sheet, and so you can see here that there's something going on. This character sheet has these skills and abilities sort of written here, and that's important to note. They're square, also a thing to note. That'll come up a little bit later. Then the box has the core rules and / like setting information, and then a whole book of adventures, 15 of or 18 of them, adventures, like pre-made adventures for you. So that's already cool. I'm already happy with the purchase, regardless of what else I find in this box. But then you've got the playmat for the family. That's what I'm getting at. So see, it's this unfoldy thing. And then you've got the dice. You've got some markers so that you can write on your character sheet, but they're dry erase, so you can wipe them off. You've got these Hmong cards, which are dream cards. Can't really read it. The Hmong cards. You've got these these Jiangshi sort of damage cards, which will come up a little bit later. And then you've got like an X card, and then you've also got, I don't remember what these are. Oh, these are the restaurant cards. And then you've got the restaurant cards, right? Also, you've got spirit paper, which, is more of a role-playing thing than it's actually necessary. It's not necessary. It's just more role-playing, but it's all good. So I just pulled all of that stuff out, and you're like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. And unfortunately, the thing that I'm going to say about as far as cons go, unfortunately, you need a lot of that stuff, almost all of it, to play the game. The spirit paper is not exactly necessary, and the dice, like, they don't have to be these particular dice, but you're going to need 2 sets of dice of 2 different colors in order to play this game. The character sheets, also not necessary, but if you don't have these character sheets, which you can write on and dry erase and whatever all, you're going to have to create something very similar because the layout of the character sheet ties particularly to your character's HP. The reason why those skills and abilities were numbered 1 through 8, and the reason why they're all squared, is so that when you take the damage cards, you place them on top of those things. So, that sounds like a lot, right? It sounds like a board game. So that's kind of what my argument is, that it's more of a board game with narrative elements. I'll get more into that in a bit, but like I think I should probably tell you the very first thing that like the very first note sort of got me with this is it's very high quality, very well done, but there are some grammatical errors, and it had 3 editors, which makes me wonder what the heck happened. But it has some grammatical errors and some layout errors. There's some places where spaces are wrong. Things like where sentences or paragraphs will like touch each other. So there's something going on there, but that's fine. I'm actually totally willing to overlook that stuff because they're like, I'm the last person to call out grammatical errors. There were, after 5 different run-throughs with myself and our editor for Maximum Apocalypse, there were still grammatical errors that appear in the Maximum Apocalypse book. So, whatever. What actually surprised me was the layout errors. Like, with the thing that's so beautifully laid out in both books, it seemed strange. But anyway, let's get back to it. So this argument that exists that it's an RPG versus board game, this is what it is. You need a lot of those accessories to play the game. Without the damage cards and without the restaurant cards, you really can't play the game very well. Like, I guess you could try to come up with some other system for getting the same information out there, but realistically, those cards exist because you need them to play the game. So you need most of that stuff to play the game, so you wouldn't be able to play it very well, I don't think, on the online without like Roll20 or something like that. You need the visual aids to see it, right? And like the map that I folded out, this is actually your family's map, so the family's restaurant, and like the sequence of events goes through these daytime to nighttime events. You start off in the morning, you got to do morning tasks, then you move to the afternoon, then into the evening, and then into the dead of night. And there's a very solid structure for play. It's a very structured play. You can't just jump ahead or loosey-goosey through some stuff. If you jump ahead, jumps everybody ahead, and that messes up a lot of the stuff that's going on. And you share as a family, so the dice system in it is a big pile of shared family dice. So you have this like 2-night, 2-day thing, and you have this big pile of family dice that you share, which sits in the center of the game board, and then you pull them when you need them, and then you put them back when you're done with them. And you do that for all of the challenges you do. But each day that goes by in the game, so each time you cycle through, and you probably go through 5 days or whatever per adventure, each day that passes, you take the game master will take one of those dice out, thereby decreasing your ability to accomplish tasks. So the longer it takes for you to solve problems, the harder it is. And then also, like with the gumshoe system, like those damage cards, like I said, you need them to play. And once you fill up, like when you get damage from various reasons, which I'll explain in a moment, when you fill those up, your character essentially becomes one of these hopping vampires, and that's it. So you fill up those slots, those 8 slots, and your character's it. There's no other HP system. That's it. That's what your character is. So that's how you play the game. The dice rolling is used to deal with challenges. Like if you have some kind of thing where there's a challenge that happens, like if it's relatively easy, if it's something like opening, like the example it gives in the book is like you're opening a bottle of soda for your customer, you're not getting a dice roll for that. But if you're opening a bottle of soda while you're cooking some food and you're having to deal with some Jiangshi vampire hopping into the kitchen, then you're going to probably have to make a roll for that. And when you do, you just take all of those dice that belong to the family dice pool, and you're going to take that whole set of dice and you're going to roll them. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sort of do this game of choosing what, you're going to sort of get rid of some and keep some. But essentially every 4 that you get, because 4 is the number of death, it's the unlucky number. Every 4 that you get is going to it's going to go back into the family pile and just sit there. It's going to be unused. But then it's also going to bring one of your dice with it that were not 4s, and it's going to start with the highest one and go through. So if you have, like, say you roll 6 dice, and you have 4 4s, you're going to basically take all of the other dice off the board, the other 2 remaining dice, and you'll have 0 dice, right? So that's how it's going to go. Or let's say you get 2 4s, you're going to take 2 dice off, you're going to have 2 dice remaining on the board. So now that we've sort of discussed how that resolves that, whatever the highest die that remains on your side that wasn't pulled off because of a 4, whatever the highest number die is, that is what your success was. So if it was a 3, that's the highest number that you have. That's what your success was. If it was a 6, that's what your success was. An 8, that's what your success was. And these are D8s, right? So that's what your highest success is, and then you basically you go from there. So if it's a 7 or 8, that's basically the best kind of success you can get. It's not a critical success, it's just a success, and good things happen to you, or you accomplish the task or whatever. If it's a 5 or 6, that's a mixed response. So you get a success, but you also get some kind of complication or failure that goes along with it. And then if you get a 1 through 3, remember 4s don't count; they automatically jump off the board. Then you fail, right? And you get some negative consequence. Now, if you have 0 dice, if you remove all your dice, you have 0 dice. That's a critical failure, and this is where the rules get a little loosey-goosey. The damage is loosey-goosey too, but this is where the rules get loosey-goosey because it doesn't tell you what to do with a critical failure. It just says in the book, it's just defined as a critical failure. It just says it's similar to a 1 to 3 result, except something really bad happens. That's basically what it says. That's not word for word, but that's essentially what it says. And so you just kind of have to go, okay, well, this failure is kind of the same as a critical failure. There's not really much difference. But there's a thing that happens when you fail in this game, and when you fail like that, where you have like a 0 or you have a 0 through 3, essentially. If you fail with any of those numbers, you fail, but you get an extra die that goes to your character. It's called an individual die, and that individual die you essentially just sort of hold on to, and you sort of bank up, and you use them for your special abilities, or you use them to sort of give you a bonus later on, and that's to sort of help you. So it's like the thing of, like, you fail, but you fail forward. Like, you get an extra die that you can use for something later. You can bank them all up and then throw them all into the pile for something a little bit later. But a critical failure says something bad happens, and so that's where we get into the conversation about, like, failures and what that means. So in this game, this is where it separates from a board game, hence the argument about it being an RPG. When you fail like this in a board game, you just fail. In this thing, you're supposed to narrate the failure and sort of what happens to your character and like sort of their dashed dreams or hopes, right? Like what this looks like now that they've failed, how that affects them. So you narrate that, but I mean, you could do the same thing for successes as well, but you're essentially narrating this failure and what that means. And you're supposed to do that by doing either a monologue discussing how your character is reacting to that, or a flashback sequence where they like go back to like something where they remember something that relates to this. Like they remember their dad saying like, never give up on opening sodas while you're cooking, right? Or something like that. And then it's like, well, I've failed my father or something like that, right? That's what you're supposed to do. So that's where it becomes RPG related. And then you also have your character has skills. This is where the other RPG element comes in. Your character has skills, but the skills just mean that you can re-roll failures that are related to whatever the skill is. So if you, for example, you have like failed rolls or a failed roll that's related to cooking or martial arts or history or something, and those are things that you have skills in, like you are the chef and you have cooking as your skill, then you can go, okay, well that outcome was a 1 through 3 or 0. Right? I'm gonna go ahead and re-roll. I'm gonna re-roll that once per day, once per game cycle of the board game day. Then you can re-roll. But you would take one away from the whole roll of dice, and then you just re-roll whatever's in the pile. So like if you had 6, right, you would take one out. So now you have 5, and you just roll all 5 of those. So you basically just re-roll that failed roll that you had. But you have to accept the new number, whatever that is, even if it's worse than before. You just have to accept it. But you also have these other special abilities called facets, which are related to your character. They give you certain advantage, and like once per day, you can basically invoke a facet, which means you get to roll one of those individual dice that you have. You roll that, and you add that number to whatever the outcome number. So if the number was 3, that was your number. You're like, crap, I'm going to fail. I'm going to invoke the fact that I'm, an actor or something, and try to play off this like failure to the people around me and make it seem like this was actually a success. And then you roll that individual die, and whatever the number is, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. You add that to the 3 and hopefully get better. And if it's a 4, it automatically jumps to 5. They're like 4s that just don't exist, right? So yeah, you do that, then that individual die goes back to the game master because it's no longer yours. You used it, so it's like a one-time use kind of thing. But that's how you would use like your special abilities, your facets. And the same thing, you do the same thing for like you have one thing on your character sheet that's called your everyday item. There's an item that you carry around. Maybe if you're the chef, it's a wok or a knife or something. Or if you're like an old person, maybe it's a mahjong tile or something. Some everyday item that you have that you use to sort of re-roll the highest roll on the outcome. So like for example, if it was like if the outcome number was a 3, you can like, I'm gonna re-roll that, right? I'm gonna use this everyday item and in this way narrate this to everyone else, and then I'm gonna re-roll that number and hopefully get something better than a 3. And that's it. That's how this game works. That's the whole way you play this game. Now there's this fighting element, this combat element. That's loosey-goosey. So you fight, like, you can't really kill a Jiangshi. They're essentially undead, right? They are like zombies, except that there's nothing you do. You kill them, they just come back to life. So they're already reanimated corpse things. So the best thing you can do is sort of lock them away, sort of permanently, restrain them as best as you can, or hopefully find the source of whatever's causing the curse to have them come alive and stop that, and thus save, or like turn them, like just they either disintegrate or turn them back into human if they were recently dead. And then then you solve the problem and you move on. But in the process of all of that, you might take physical damage or emotional damage, and that's the best part about the damage in this game. It could be either, it doesn't matter, it's the same kind of damage regardless of how you do it, and you can get the damage from either physical things, like you fell and you got hurt, or like the Jiangshi bit you or something, but you also get them from Hmong cards, and Hmong cards are dream cards. It's an optional rule that they added, but it's a dream card, and so you essentially have dreams, so each morning you'll roll to see how many dreams you had, and some of them are good, some of them are bad, and if they're bad, they hit you like damage, and so you get this damage. There's a certain amount of it. You can't take a bunch. You can't die from the dreams, right? But you can take some. But the dreams and the combat affect you the same way. So, it's kind of this cool idea that maybe in the fight you didn't get injured. Maybe you just got scared. Maybe the thing coming at you didn't actually bite you. Maybe just it got so close, and then you broke away and you got away from it that you got scared, and now you have psychological trauma from that. So that's actually very cool, and I like the damage, but when do I give it to you becomes the real question. So that's where the game is a little wishy-washy, because it's like you basically give it during failures, and that's not even in the rules. The rules don't actually say when to give damage. In the GM section and in the player section, there's not really anything to say it except one brief little thing in the player section where it's failures could result in damage. That's what it says. That's it. And it wasn't until I read the actual playthrough where there's an actual play of a whole sort of sequence of events where somebody takes damage and they get 2 damage cards for getting a 5 or 6 or something. So they did a partial success, partial failure, and they still get 2 damage. It doesn't clarify why, but that's the only time it says that they take damage. And so I don't know. I don't know when people take damage. I assume that it's when they critically fail or fail, but it's not really well explained in the book. The only thing that's really well explained is that Hmong thing, that the dream sequence. And so that I think is awesome, because at least that tells me how much damage they take based on their nightmares, right? And it also tells me what to do with that. Healing, it says healing's this thing where they kind of do a thing, and we're gonna role play out healing somebody with herbalist medicine, because that's how you heal people, and then they get to heal 1 damage. Whereas the Hmong thing is you talk to somebody, that's how you get rid of it, and when you talk to them, they will either end up with it themselves or it goes away, or you talking to you also clears up their own thing. So you both heal, right? And so that's kind of cool. And then it does have rules for playing a hopping vampire if you wanted to go that route. If your GM wanted to include hopping vampires as a potential player character, i.e. that instead of just dying and becoming one of these NPC hopping vampires, you actually get to play out being a hopping vampire. There's rules for that too. But essentially, the really good things about this game are the art, the wealth of knowledge about immigrants and the immigrant experience, particularly Asian, especially in the time frames of 1850 to 1920. It's got a whole lot of information about the various different Chinatowns that exist around the United States and Canada. It's not a typical RPG, so it's definitely cool and new. And I've never really thought about playing an RPG that was based on my food experience, my food industry, food service experience, but this game specifically wants me to be a Chinese restaurant person. So I have I'm trying to think, when I was reading through it, when I made my character, did I want to be a back of house chef kind of character, or did I want to be a front of house a waiter or waitress kind of character, or the I can't think of what they're called, the maitre d' or whatever, where they get people and they just seat them and then they go back, the front person. I was just, because I can't think of what that's called, but anyway. I've never thought of an RPG that would play out that sort of experience that I had. That's it. The other thing that I really like about the game is the very hard limit for time. So when you have once a day abilities, you would do in say D&D 4th edition, or even in Dungeons and Dragons in general, there's a very specific time. You know what a day is. It's not a loosey-goosey number or time. You don't just wait for the GM to go, it's been a day. You know when a day is because it plays out on the board. So okay, now I can reset. Now I can do my special abilities again. But the cons are, on top of the things that make it so you have to play all of that, you have to have all that stuff to be able to play the game, the book is also very front-loaded. And by that I mean that the organization of the book is not very conducive for quick looking up or quick understanding of the game to start playing. In fact, it mostly, in the very beginning, it's here's the overview of what this game is, and then it jumps right into X cards and safety and session 0 kind of stuff. And then it goes on to Asian stereotypes and how to play an Asian character and not fall into Asian stereotypes. And then it goes into the history of Chinatowns in the United States and Canada. and then it goes into like GM information, and then finally gets to character creation on page like 78 of the book. And then the book is only 150 pages. So on page 78 it like starts, and then it starts getting into like gameplay rules on page like 101. So it's like this, it's like there's a lot going on before you get to like how to play the game. And I think like personally that should go up front, and then the rest of it is like information for the setting, but they didn't really do it that way. And then with the character creation, it's kind of loosey-goosey. Like it's not super structured like you'd find with most traditional RPGs. It's pretty loosey-goosey, and you basically, it's like, pick 2 skills. Here's 13 points. Put them in the language stuff. That it's like that. And so, figure out what your hopes and dreams are. And it's kind of loosey-goosey. And if you're not used to games where you sort of have free flow on, what your character looks like, you might be a little confused. In fact, I really wish there was, an 8-step character. Here's the 8 steps of creating character or something like that. Because I got lost a little bit, and I actually missed the whole thing about languages until I was looking at the character sheet and realized there was a whole section that I didn't know what I was supposed to put in there, and I had to go back, and I was like, oh, I apparently skipped this whole section. So it's not super conducive for that. And so so those are the organizational problems, but visually it's really nice, and it is different, and so it's different kind of thing. And I'm playing like a regular person. It's hardwired into the game that I'm a regular person trying to do my normal Chinese restaurant owning life, and stuff is going on around me, and hopefully my family members, like the old grandma that my mom who lives with me or whatever, and then my son who's getting ready to go off to college, hopefully they'll help me deal with the fact that there's a hopping vampire coming into my kitchen while I'm trying to cook dinner for the dinner rush and open a bottle of soda, right? So that's the whole game. That's the very long review, much longer than I wanted to. But it is a cool game. Like I said, 2 thumbs up. It is made by a couple people, and I messed up their names once when I said it, so I'm not going to say it again. But I have seen them on social media. I'm friends with one of them. I have been for apparently a while. I guess I must have jumped into being their friend at some point when they were talking about the game or during the Kickstarter or something. And I actually am cool with that. It's totally cool. They're very cool, and I try to be very cool, so I hope that we gel well in our social media presence. I don't really talk to the person very much, so I don't interact with them or anything. But I it's all cool, Facebook friends and whatever. But that's it. So like I said, I give it 2 thumbs up. I want to play it, but I'm also understanding that it's essentially, in my mind, a narrative board game. It's a board game with very strong narrative elements. Because one of the things I forgot to mention, and this is what I'll mention now before I end, there's no character advancement. You don't gain XP, you don't become a better character, or grow more skills or anything like that. And your family doesn't grow in prosperity or have more life or anything like that. So your house's life, all of those special things are on the outside. Those are all your hit points, just like your character sheet. Your family has hit points, and so that can also, if you don't do the tasks each day, it can essentially destroy your restaurant, and then nobody wants to go to your restaurant because it's in ruin. So, you don't character advance, your family doesn't advance, so there's no real progression for prolonged campaigns. So it really sets itself up for one-shots and one-shotty type situations, in which case it really is kind of a board game that you reset each session, right? You just reset your character sheets, maybe play a different family, maybe play a different kind of situation. But that's it. So anyway, like I said, 2 thumbs up, very long video. I hope you guys watched the whole thing. I feel like all of these RPG corners are all going to be kind of long because I spend time talking about the stuff and then I actually get into what I think about it. And thinking about it, what I think about it's 15 minutes by itself. So that's it. I will talk to you all later. Please check out this game if you can. It's called, well, I lost the lid. I'll just pull the book up. Jiangshi. There you go. Blood in the Banquet Hall. So, all right. Have a good day, everybody. I'm going to transition